Okay, everyone, hi, welcome. It's a thrill to have you here. It's a real thrill because tonight is the first live book launch event of Rupy's for Cooks, which is his fourth book. I'm very honoured to be the first step of the tour.
Thank you.
So thank you. Podcast extraordinaire, doctor, basically here to revolutionise our lives on how to prevent getting sick and all. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah,
I'm
tell us
so
about it.
privileged to be able to celebrate it with you guys in this wonderful setting. This is like a proper foodie cookbook. I'm just super passionate about getting accessible, healthy, easy, flavorful recipes into people's hands because everything that I do, obviously you know, is going to be healthy.
I read your whole book cover to cover and there was no, you can't have this.
We need to really help people to create those habits. And the way you do that is by showing them and enticing them with delicious, healthy food that they can prepare themselves.
Okay, then I went to the colours because actually it matters on your plate.
The science is complex, the solution is very simple. Implementation, that's the hard bit.
I feel like I've read so many opinions about fish that even the fish must be confused.
That's a really good description, I'm going to use that. That's
Thanks,
great.
Dr. Rupy. I love doing these events. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming, and let's tuck into some snacks.
Doctor's Kitchen. Recipes, health, lifestyle.
I think really we're all sitting here and grateful to you for kind of helping us all to navigate this completely mad world of nutrition and health. And there's so many avenues to which you do it. I mean, I'm personally, on a very personal note, thrilled about what you do for medical students because to start at grassroots, for those who don't know, one of the many, many hats that Rupy wears is he has brought nutrition into medical school to start when you're training to a doctor. Is that, I'm correct saying that correctly, Anna? It starts from training and you are educating from the bottom up. But the non-medics like us, the medics across the field, and also improving food in hospitals, which I've seen you've been doing as well, which is really, for anyone that's spent time in hospital, to know that you're there to be treated and then you can't eat anything that's healthy and the staff don't have access. So that is really amazing. But it's really the reach of, to all of us through your app, through your newsletter, that I think is really inspiring. And the thing that I personally love the most is that you don't tell us what we can't do. Like you're not there saying you can't do this and you can't do that. You're saying here is what's accessible to you. So that is a very bizarre introduction for
Thank you.
Rupy. For those who don't know, I'm Hanna. This is my home. I started my life as a designer. And then about 8 years ago, I started to write about food and teach classes, and I run supper clubs and I run events like this. The thing that probably excites me the most, I've always been extremely passionate about food, but for me, it's not what you make, it's how you share it and how you look after yourself by sourcing cleverly and well and making food accessible and easy. And for me, the most exciting thing is getting you excited about food. So the prospect of sitting here and chatting to Rupy was a perfect dovetail. I am definitely not a nutritionist. I definitely do not practice enough moderation, but it's all in the balance, and here we are. So let's start. First of all, let's celebrate tonight and the launch of Cooks. This is your fourth book.
Yes, and I'm so privileged to be able to celebrate it with you guys in this wonderful setting. It's amazing. Thank you so much, Hanna, for putting this on. As soon as I walked in, I was like, wow, this is a special setting you've got here, so it's epic. And yeah, this is my fourth cookbook. I didn't think I'd be getting to my fourth when I wrote my first one. This is like a proper foodie cookbook, I feel. It could live on that shelf over there with all the other cookbooks you've got over there. Yeah, you've got Yotam's there, you've got Diana Henry, and now you've got a Dr. Rupy COOKS there as well. It's a hardback. And I'm just super passionate about getting accessible, healthy, easy, flavorful recipes into people's hands because everything that I do, obviously, you know, is going to be healthy because, you know, we've done all the research, we're packing lots of vegetables in, we're plant-centric, we align all the recipes that we create with the principles of healthy eating. Who listens to my podcast? Any show of hands? So you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. Every day, every week, I'm always banging on about how we need to eat according to the principles of healthy eating. But it's also going to be super easy because we all live very busy lives. We have responsibilities. Many of us have children. Many of us work busy professional jobs or whatever we might be doing. And we want minimal washing up. I think that's one of the things that I've definitely got from feedback from a lot of people is Yotam. I love him, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But like whenever I do a Yotam, I know I've got to do it at the weekend because I've got to spend like hours cleaning up afterwards. So I want my books to be like Monday to Friday. And it sort of like lies in that moderation that you were talking about as well. But also it's got to be flavorful. Because one of the things that I think is a bit of a myth when it comes to healthy eating is that willpower is enough and willpower is not enough. All the behavioral psychology tells us that you can't rely on willpower alone. You have to make something enjoyable and pleasurable for it to become a habit that is almost automatic. And so for healthy eating to be something that is described as banal or just health promoting is not going to create that habit that we all want to keep for our health needs. So the flavor element I feel in this particular cookbook is something that I've amped up, and you'll find recipes like the sticky red beans that have got gochujang in, for example, or you've got the feast section, which I think I'm most proud of because most people think about healthy eating as something that you do in solitude, like restrictive sort of diets that usually around January, February time. Whereas actually I want you to be able to use this cookbook to entertain your friends, celebrate something with, do a celebratory healthy feast under 90 minutes. And also explore different cuisines as well whilst you're doing that. So
yeah, that was really evident in your book actually, was how you go around the world basically. And it is, I mean, when I cook and when I teach, I always say the three things you want to think about in a dish is flavour, colour and texture, because no one wants to sit down to a brown meal. It's kind of, you want it to be inviting, and then automatically once your eyes are satiated, you'll start to be satiated and you're probably less likely to overeat.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what you just said there about your eyes and your senses that you're trying to entertain, you're creating anticipation. And that anticipation is all the senses basically coalesce to impact the primary cortices of your brain. It basically is hitting your pleasure centers of your brain. And what that does is if you're hitting that over and over again, it creates repetition, it creates a behavior, it creates a habit. Big Food knows this very well, which is why when you see a McDonald's advert or something that's super indulgent, the shine on the food, the way it's been described, the image itself is so well fine-tuned to the last book that I was writing, that I wrote. I had a photographer that did a lot of corporate work, and when we were talking, we were doing this shoot, he said to me, I'm so glad I'm doing like a proper cookbook where we can be like, free and frivolous with the design and the styling and all that kind of stuff. So I've just done, I won't mention the name, but I've just done like a big piece of work for a big company. I won't say the name, but because I'm being recorded. but I'll tell you afterwards. But he told me, it was like, they were so anal about every element of light, of texture, of superlative, of all those different descriptors, because they know that they are trying to hack our brains, such that they create anticipation, such that they create the sort of anticipation of pleasure. So yeah, that's basically what we need to do with healthy eating. We need to heighten up the flavor and use the same tricks that other companies are using to create habits that are actually going to be healthful.
I mean, I think your trick's quite clever though, because every book you read is telling you what you're supposed to avoid. And the minute you're supposed to avoid it, you want it, even if you don't like it. So what you do, I read your whole book cover to cover, and there was you can't have this. I noticed that there were certain things and ingredients that were missing. That was fine. But
are you going to name them?
no. It's like choose your own adventure. Everyone has to go buy the book at the end and see what they find is missing. But
Spot the difference.
Yeah, exactly. But no. So I think that automatically it doesn't become a chore when you aren't allowed something. If you go, what I loved about your book was this is how you do it. Because I feel so often we're told what we're not supposed to do, which isn't helpful, because just because we're not supposed to do it, you're not actually told how to do it successfully.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is really different about your book. And it does, I know that it makes it less of a health book and more of a cookbook that you can keep on your shelf. And I thought that was really refreshing, actually.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And I think that comes from personal experience of, are there any medics here, like GPs or, GP?
No, I'm a hospital consultant.
Oh, there you go. So I don't know whether you've had this experience, but in primary care, when you just diagnose someone with high blood pressure or excessive dietary cholesterol, let's say, in their blood panel, what we're told to do is give this sort of single sheet of low cholesterol foods or like healthy eating diet sheet, and you give it to the patient, say this is what you can't have anymore, you can't have red meat, you can't have butter, you can't have cheese, go figure it out. And that is just wholly inadequate. You can't.
Unhelpful.
Yeah, probably a lot of us have maybe even received one of those sort of like healthy eating diet sheets. That is not enough. We need to really help people to create those habits. And the way you do that is by showing them and enticing them with delicious, healthy food that they can prepare themselves, but also reflects their cultural heritage. Because one of the things that I think we do badly, particularly in a place as multicultural as London, is try to force a Eurocentric menu on people from a vast variety of backgrounds.
Yeah.
And what I try and do with my recipes is show that if you are from a Sri Lankan background, you can have Sri Lankan food. If you are from a Korean background, if you are from African background, if you are from an Indian background, you can have your heritage cuisine as long as it conforms to these principles of healthy eating. So whilst it might be Mediterranean in terms of its style, it doesn't need to be Mediterranean flavored.
Well, because I've selected some recipes that we will taste afterwards that I've made, and it was really quite fun because we've got stuff from all over. We have little Mediterranean salad, and we have, some masala cauliflower, and we've got some Tunisian chickpeas and a bit of cornbread. And I'm like, wow, we've gone around the world, and it's all hanging together, happily on the table and colourful. So it was really. I was like, oh, what should I make?
Yeah.
And I was obviously, in my way that I approach things, was like, how is it gonna look together? I didn't want everything the same colour. So once I knew that the flavour combinations are going to be okay, then I went to the colours, because actually it matters on your plate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've got to have variation. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The principles of healthy eating are pretty simple. I always say, look, the science is complex. When we're talking about anti-inflammatory chemicals, we're talking about polyphenols, we're talking about the gut microbiota, all that wonderful science is super complicated. The solution is very simple. It is eat more healthful food, have more diversity in your diet, increase fiber, have a plant-centric diet. Implementation, that's the hard bit. Science is complex, solutions are simple, implementation, doing it every single day, that's the hard stuff.
I find that it's the pre-cook. So it's not actually the cooking that's tricky. It's when are you shopping?
Yes.
What are you cooking it in? Like, that's what I feel people really struggle when they go to cook. They think, I've got it all there, but then there's that one thing I don't have anything serving. So, and then they're bought. So it's actually, what's so great about your book is you can literally serve it in the things you've made it. So it's about, the cooking isn't tricky. It's how it fits into your week. And I think that is part of the education of cooking.
Yeah.
It's not how to fry an onion. It's when are you going to buy it? Where are you going to buy it? How long is it going to last?
Totally.
And what else are you going to use with it? Because then once that's part of the system, and I think that's really kind of, you cover that really well, actually.
And that's why I love working with chefs and home cooks and people who absolutely adore food, because you are creating culinary confidence in people that require it if they are to eat well every single day. I get DMs all the time about like, oh, I don't have this particular ingredient, what can I use as a swap? And I'm like, straight away, I know intuitively, as many people here probably know as well, because we're all probably intuitive cooks, that you could swap coriander seeds with this other aromatic, or you can swap fennel for another allium vegetable. And the health benefits are relatively, similar. It's not really about being prescriptive about singular ingredients. It's actually being a lot more flexible and knowing how they flex in a recipe.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the whole, the cooking adventure is, being able to play with it a bit of it and have fun. And I think that goes back to being contained but not restrictive.
Yeah.
So that's
and the fun element, I think, is really important as well, because food is one of the most beautiful ways in which we can communicate across different cultures. It's a huge route to pleasure. It's an amazing way to celebrate. It's an incredible centerpiece of community. I mean, events like this really do warm my soul, because you get to meet people of hopefully delicious food.
Hopefully.
Hannah's definitely done a great job.
He's taking no credit for anything we're eating tonight in terms of the execution.
It does look wonderful.
I was not one of the recipe testers. We'll come to that. I was not selected as a recipe tester.
But, I think it's just one of those wonderful things that shouldn't be put into a bucket of either it's comfort food or it's healthy food. There is a rich sort of, there's a partnership to be had there. And that's hopefully what I do with the recipes and the content that I put out, and the way I describe food as well.
Yeah, I think also you're very clear, being a doctor, you must get a lot of questions, but that this is you're not curing, this isn't the cure-all diet, this is a preventative way to live, which I think is a really kind of important distinction. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Bit? I mean, within the book, this book, and then even previous books as well, particularly Eat to Beat Illness, I do dive into this whole concept of food as medicine. And I think it's been misinterpreted in many ways by people, willingly or unwillingly, I'm not too sure, as a replacement for things like pharmaceuticals and drugs and medications, when that's not really what I'm talking about at all. There are some minor and rare instances where food can be the medicine, and that's part of the treatment and management plan. But more so than not, it's really about a preventative lifestyle that encompasses all the other foundations of healthy living that we know can prevent some of the biggest killers that afflict us, particularly in the Western world. So, yeah, I make that distinction pretty clear. But I also welcome, other ways of thinking about things. Like, I grew up in an Indian household. Ayurvedic sort of traditions were very much sort of instilled in me. I promptly poo-pooed a lot of that when I went to med school. And then I came back to when I got ill myself, when I became a junior doctor about 14 years ago, when I had to sort of undergo my own sort of consultations, my own sort of patient journey. And a lot of what I thought was just old wives' tale that my mum and my family were telling me actually turned out to have a lot of scientific evidence behind them. So I've had a lot of I told you so. Yeah, I've had that a lot, and I've had a lot of I told you so's, and I continue to get that as well every time they bring something up. But I love it. I love being sort of a student of multiple different cuisines, traditions, and different medical practices. That makes me slightly unique, I think, it makes some medics uncomfortable. It makes other people a lot more inquisitive. And I like to think that I find the balance well. But
both.
True, I'm a foodie. Otherwise, I'd just be prescribing kale salads to everyone.
It's the whole load of mental health benefits as well. But one thing you talk about is consistency. Now, for some of us, consistency is a bit challenging. Can you talk about consistency versus moderation and what you mean by consistency?
Yeah.
Because I think that people could misinterpret that, and I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, I think so. So the benefits of eating well really come down to how well you are to consistently eat in a way that aligns with those principles of healthy eating. There was a really interesting study by Professor Gardner at Stanford University. It was called the A to Z study. And what they did is they compared different diets. I think they had a low-carb diet, a paleo diet, even something that was bordering ketogenic. And they followed these patients up for 12 months. And that's actually quite a long time when it comes to nutrition studies. And what they found was they were looking at a particular endpoint, which I don't really like. It's weight as an endpoint, as well as a few other parameters. But weight was the primary endpoint. And what they found was every single diet was exactly the same in terms of its efficacy. The factor that differentiated whether someone was going to be successful on it or not was whether they were able to consistently eat according to that diet. Because when you group them all together, a lot of them do very similar things. They remove the crap, they increase plants, and they increase whole foods. With the exception of extreme ketogenic diets, they're also increasing fiber as well. So really it comes down to how consistently well can you eat in a way that aligns with healthy eating principles. And so for me, I'm pretty agnostic as to whether you choose to be 100% plant-based or have a little bit of meat in your diet, as long as it's roughly in line with that. And I'm more concerned about, okay, how can we get you eating in a certain way consistently? Because moderation, I think, is sort of a term that I love, don't get me wrong, but it's almost used as a bit of an excuse. Like every single day, you're like, a couple of brownies,
The 80-20
moderation.
rule, maybe not so much.
Yeah, maybe not so much. And I think the moderation term can be used kind of loosely. Don't get me wrong, I do it myself
We
as well.
do have ice cream tonight.
Yeah, which is from my
I
book.
I know, you said ice cream. I was like, yes.
Which is from
Ice
my
cream.
book. Yeah.
And I did ask about how I got very confused what to do about drinks. Anyway, sorted it all out.
Yeah.
That to me, I guess it's your own interpretation of what moderation is, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's a bit of moderation. But yeah, one drink. So one of the things that I listened to your podcast with Tim Spector last week when it came out, which was, I love him too.
Okay.
And
I'll tell him you said that.
Yeah. And you asked him a question that I thought was brilliant. So I'm going to ask you the question.
Okay.
And that was, you get asked a lot of questions by a lot of people, but what question would you like to answer?
Yeah.
That was a great question. I thought, brilliant, I'm going to ask him that one.
Yeah, I know Tim for a little while, and he's been on the podcast a couple of times, I think, before. And, you know, when you're doing these sort of book PR events, they all seem very sort of similar. Not this, by the way. This is really different. This is very different, and I love it. I have a special shout out to Sarah for organising everything as well. She's wonderful. Everyone sort of asks the same questions of the interviewee. It's like, you know, Dr. Rupy, what are the principles of healthy eating? Dr. Rupy, like, tell me about this. Tell me about saturated fat. Tell me about cheese. And that's why I like to sort of open up a conversation about whatever my guest wants to talk about, what really like gets them fired up. And I think it's, honestly, it's the subject around consistency, the subject around the celebratory elements around food, about how we can create a culture of healthy eating within this country. But aside from that, it's creating a generation of medics who can appreciate nutritional medicine, creating an environment where we can actually enjoy healthy food in the workplace, which is why the hospital food element, just to clarify, I'm not working currently on hospital food for patients. I'm actually working on hospital food for patient visitors and staff, because people who are stuck in these hospitals, as our consultant friend will attest to, you know, you're going to be there for 12, 13 hours sometimes in a day, particularly the administrators, the porters, the nurses, and the junior medics as well. And where do you have to eat? Well, you've got, I don't know how to say the names again, but you know, you don't have very healthy options. You usually have like a baked item, a white bread sandwich, you know, a meal deal. And these are sort of quote unquote normal, but we know that's not normal. We know that that can spike your glucose level up. You know that it's lacking in fiber. We know it doesn't have any healthful elements to it. It's just something for sustenance, and that's just not good enough. And that's why I'm really passionate about completely reforming those spaces in which we eat and normalizing what healthy and good lunches look like. So those are probably the things that I'm most passionate about and where I want to direct my attention. But I tell you the other thing that you mentioned, the pre-cook. That's really interesting, because the other side to what I do with the Doctor's Kitchen is I just started my app about a year ago. And right now it's a library of recipes that you can filter according to health goals. So me and my research team, we look through the dietary patterns and ingredients that align with anti-inflammation. So we use something called the Dietary Inflammation Index. Cardiovascular health, so we'll look at Mediterranean diet guidelines, for example, or healthy eating index guidelines. And that allows the user to just quickly filter through all these delicious recipes without really having to Google, what should I eat for? One of the things that we've consistently got feedback on is, how do I make the whole process of generating a shopping list easier? How do I just click a button and then my whole week is sorted for me or my family or my partner or my kids? All their taste and allergens are sort of catered for, and our health needs as well, in the click of a button. That's something that we should already have, and that's...
But do you think that's possible? Because this is why I'm going to start a debate with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
One of the things that I think is really important about making choices about what you want to eat is actually making the choice. Mm-hmm. So if you have a weekly food shop, and you have the same food shop every week, you're not engaging with what you're doing. So you're not going and stopping at the vegetable shop on your way home and going, oh my God, that cauliflower looks amazing. That's what I'm going to make. You're not starting the process before you've even started.
Yeah.
Your choice is already made, and it's a very passive decision. So one thing I like to encourage people to do is actually search out what they want to eat when it comes to the fresh fruit and vegetables, because then they're already excited about it. Whereas if they're unpacking their shopping thinking, bloody hell, it's cauliflower again, that's not exciting. So I think it's a really difficult thing to actually manage, because that requires more time, because then you're required to actually go to the shops rather than sit at your desk and multitask and order it online. So it's a real tension. But I think that when you, like, eating well is I think, from a totally non-medical or nutritional perspective, one of the best forms of self-care, because you are thinking about yourself and what you want and meeting your needs and really thinking about what will make you feel good on that day. Yeah. And I think when you start the process like that, you're less likely to fall down the rabbit hole of grabbing chocolate because you haven't eaten and you're too hungry, and you're less likely to spike. So that's where I feel, and I think creating that is going to be really, it creates a tension, because people are becoming numb to those decisions. It becomes everything we're doing is so automated. And I think when you think about what you want to eat, the excitement starts when you start thinking about it before you've set foot in a shop or in your kitchen or anywhere else to start the process. So that's the way I like to think about it, and I'm completely, obviously, food obsessed, so it helps. But one of the things you said, I just want to come back to, which was kind of family eating together, because I think that's another, I think when you share food with other people, it becomes a celebration. You're less likely to eat looking at your phone or watching TV, and it becomes less of an issue about what you're eating, but who you're sharing it with. And one of the things that was really interesting about your book is a lot of the recipes are for two people, because while sharing food with other people as a celebration is really great, most of us eat meals with other people all the time, and it's about taking the time and the care to actually feed yourself, and sometimes just to celebrate that solo meal. And I think it's really accessible from your book. And I think when you start thinking that way, then it probably helps filter down and maintain the consistency. You don't think, when I'm eating on my own, I'm going to have a piece of, I'm going to have a Pop-Tart, but when I eat with everyone else, I'm going to eat, like, a lovely, the Indian vegan feast out of the book. It's the consistency start. And so that's what I thought was so helpful in kind of helping, educating us in.
So I'll go back to your point about almost like removing the romance or the beauty of cooking by automating out, all the recipes and taking that headache away from you. I agree there's a balance to strike. Yeah, it's really hard. Because I love, like, going to, in a true sort of bougie fashion. On the weekend, I go to my farmer's market.
Every Sunday.
Mine's on a Saturday.
I'm right
but
there with
I
you,
go
yeah.
on Saturday.
Religious.
I go there. I chat to my grocers. I chat to the fishermen. I love it. But you know, I'm a real foodie.
But then things come into season. You're excited about them. Like rhubarb's here, amazing.
Totally.
You know.
But then I chat to my mates.
Yeah.
And particularly my male friends, and I can say that because there's hardly
heavy
men
female.
here.
I did you warn you.
Oh,
Heavy female. Yeah.
And I chat to them, and they're like, I've never been to a farmer's market, you know?
What do you mean?
And it's a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
And so I would say there is definitely a balance to strike where you want some foundational level of something looking after your health that you can automate out. But then also, you know, you can open up one of your delicious cookbooks at the weekend and then enjoy something there. It might not be the solution for everyone, but for a lot of people, they need that sort of foundation.
100%. I agree. No, I completely agree. But I'm just saying there's also that tension because if you only do that. Then,
yes.
But also there's like I have another philosophy of cook once, eat twice.
Oh yeah, I mean, leftovers is a big
it's
thing
like
in
your
our
best
household.
friend.
Yeah, absolutely. But some people are very adverse to leftovers as well. It's almost like, you know, what happened with Google Maps. Yeah. You know, when I was at med school 20 years ago now, we didn't have Google Maps. I knew London like the back of my hand.
We had to find our way.
I knew the buses, I knew everything. Now, if I had to walk home, even though I'm not too far from here, I'd get lost. I would literally get lost because I haven't had to exercise that.
It's not even that you would have got lost. You don't even have to think about it. It's not something that even has to cross your brain. You don't even have to because someone's already telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So therefore, you're not looking up and taking note of the streets. And
I
have an issue with that.
And there, I can tell. So, and you know,
I'm so old.
I appreciate what I've lost, but then the convenience option that I've gained is okay for me.
No.
And people always have the option of, you know, well, I don't want to do that. I'd rather go to the market and find out what's good with my cauliflower and use the principles of healthy eating, and I can figure out myself. For a lot of people, they don't even want to do that.
So my question is, if they're not doing that, it's how do you engage them? So that's really my question. It's not, it wasn't like, it was more, if you are living in this more automated, repetitive, disengaged because you're not thinking about it, like the way you're not thinking about your route home because you don't need to. You're absolutely fine with that. It's fine. They don't have to think about their list. But then, how do they get excited? And that's really, I think that's the challenge almost.
Yeah. I think the excitement can definitely be brought out, but in a slightly different way. You know, I can't say I get excited about my Google Maps route that's going to be taking me straight home.
You do excite people in what you're doing because you've got like, I think you're doing it. But I'm just saying like that, I think when it comes to cooks and encouraging people to eat, that is, I mean, if you can be excited and engaged, then you automatically will do it more. It helps to, it's like setting the wheels in motion, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But right, we've been going on quite a long time. So I'm going to open up the floor. Now, as I said, Dr. Rupy gets loads of questions. So we'd love you to ask questions. He is going to, after this, I should have, I've gone this all backwards, sorry. I should have told you at the beginning how this was going to work, but I didn't. We all just sat down. I'm going to bring out some food, some samples for us to try from the book. We're going to have some masala cauliflower, which has a cucumber raita. We have in the book, it's the roasted celeriac salad.
Yep.
There was an option to have sweet potatoes and turnips and parsnips. So I've done all of them on a bed of radicchio with some puri lentils. Substitutions or additions, either one. Or all of it, because I thought we're a lot of people. We're also having some Tunisian chickpeas, which have harissa in, and they're served with some tahini. And we have some cornbread, which has some hot honey on top. Everything has a punch and a kick that comes from a different part of the world, which I love. And then once you've done, there's plates out there, we'll bring out all the food, we'll clear some of the chairs, and then we have some apple crumble with ice cream. The apple crumble is vegan, the ice cream is not. So just state if you don't want to have it. It's got miso in it, and it's absolutely bloody genius. It's so good. I was actually a bit upset when I was eating it, but it was so good. So it's really amazing. The miso, I was like, that is so clever. Anyway, it's so clever. So Dr. Rupy's going to answer some questions. I think if we can keep more personal questions for afterwards when he'll be signing books, then we've got books to sign, and if there's more general questions, that'd be great. So open up the floor, and then when we're done, we'll eat.
I'm dying to ask about bones, but I'm not going to.
Sure, yeah.
You spoke about a healthy food revolution, and there's clearly a cost of living crisis and enormous amounts of food poverty in schools. How do you change the culture, and especially when so many people are under the poverty line and not getting school meals? I mean, is there anything that you can recommend? Or
totally. I mean, so we're trying to tackle this in different ways. So within Culinary Medicine, which is the non-profit that I started back in 2017, that was really geared towards trying to educate the new generation of medics about nutrition during their training, because I'm not too sure if everyone's aware, the average training is around 5 hours in the context of a 5 to 6 year degree. There was a recent study that mapped it all out, and the range is from 0 to 20 hours. So some people are not getting anything. So we were trying to overhaul that. Culinary Medicine are also creating healthy budget meals that we're giving out via other culinary schools across the country. I did something very recently with BBC. So we created recipes based on the latest supermarket prices as of November 2022. And we managed to get down the portions, the servings, between £1 and £1.40. And I made sure there was 3 portions of vegetables in every serving as well. And it's being very creative with the ingredients, using frozen, using tinned or canned, all these different things that your average home cook, particularly if you're time poor, you're feeding multiple mouths, you're not really going to have that creativity. So we put that out there, and Jack Morrow does obviously a lot of stuff. There is an insidious line where no matter how cheap I get a budget recipe down to, it's never going to be enough. And food banks have a massive responsibility, unfortunately. I remember having a conversation with Professor Guy Standing. I don't know if anyone's heard of Professor Guy, but he's a big proponent of this concept of universal basic income, which is where everyone in the country gets a base layer of cash. And I proposed to him this idea of, well, wouldn't it be great if everyone just got healthy food, for healthy items in every single household? He actually didn't take kindly to the idea. He actually said that because you're chaining people who are below that poverty line to what they can consume or not, like whether they choose to spend money on food or choose to spend money on other things, that loss of control is actually worse for their feelings of being trapped. But on the other side, there is a charity called the Alexandra Rose Charity. He was on my podcast recently, Jonathan Paul. He's a fantastic guy. He's launched a pilot where they're giving Rose vouchers. Rose vouchers are £5 to £20, and you can only spend these vouchers, these literal money, in the markets where they sell fruits and vegetables and generally healthy items. So there are some schemes being piloted where that would literally be for free. And it stimulates the economy. There's a whole bunch of other beneficial outcomes as well. So there are things there that are definitely happening. My hands are sort of tied as to what I can have an impact on, but I definitely think it's going to be a blend of universal basic income, healthy food vouchers, and greater responsibility from the government and schools about how we can provide healthier options for children. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but it's quite a complicated topic.
Any other questions from anyone? Go ahead.
Sorry. This is to do with the Zoe study, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
So where you give some samples and they give you back specific information about the diet you should eat, and also you get a glucose monitor if you opt for that. I'm wondering, would that be useful for people, for example, who come in who have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, whose diet isn't that great? Do you think in the future this would be something that would be rolled out in the NHS?
So yeah, personalized medicine, also known as P4 medicine, if you look at it in the literature, is basically predictive, it's personalized, and there's a couple other P's that I've forgotten. But basically, it's what you've just described. It's where you have continuous wearables that monitor everything from the fats in your blood, your sugar responses to certain foods, your microbiota and how that changes day to day, even according to your periods as well. It can also change the stresses in your life, the seasons, all these things have an impact. And we don't really know what's under the hood at the moment. We're sort of like eating blind. The caveat to that is, I think most people can garner the benefits of healthy eating by just doing healthy eating principles. And actually that extra 10-15% of extra personalization that you get from those different tests might be able to fine tune a little bit, but actually we need to get the basics right. And that's why my honest opinion is these are great. And I think they're for a particular type of person who loves the analytics, who loves learning exactly what's going on. I'm one of those people. I wear an Oura ring, I monitor my sleep, I do a whole bunch of tests periodically throughout the year. But ultimately, how much has changed my dietary habits? Probably not that much at all. And really, it's about, I always come back to this, it's boring, but it's consistency. It's really about consistency. So my obsession is really, how can I create an environment where you can make the right choices, regardless of whether you should be having this particular brand of crisps or this particular brand of oats. It's really about the consistency part rather than uber personalization.
Interesting. We had a question.
Hi. Throughout your journey, you must have met some amazing chefs, authors, and had some great experiences. So what has been your best foodie experience?
Doing Saturday Kitchen. But without a doubt. So Saturday Kitchen is my favorite show. I've watched it for absolutely years, back when James Martin was doing it. And when I got the opportunity to cook on it. So I've been on it a couple of times. The first time was during it was branded the Daily Kitchen. I don't know if you remember it during COVID. They did a couple of weeks where they did a Daily Kitchen, and they got me to come on and give my sort of 2 cents about how you can use store cupboard spices, because we couldn't buy anything from the supermarkets at that time. And then when I got invited to do a recipe on the show, that was like a dream come true for me. So that was probably the height of my career in terms of the foodie stuff. And then working with Jamie, I think on one of his shows a couple of years ago, he's been a big inspiration of mine with what he did with school dinners. We were talking about it before, like ultimately it hasn't been a success, but for one person to generate that much attention to it, the fact that we're still talking about it 20 years on, pretty impressive.
I think it was successful in some ways though.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it definitely had a dip. So.
Yeah. It was everyone you talked to, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Everything's there. Why did it not?
Yeah. So this is the interesting and complicated world of service contracts when it comes to public sector catering. So I'm going to be careful about who I talk about here, but there are a number of multinational corporations that basically own all the contracts across everything from MOD, prisons, hospitals, schools, everything. And they work on economies of scale and efficiency. So everything is generally made in a centralized kitchen, and then it's farmed out to all these different things.
Industrialized food.
So industrialized food, but also the reason why they are able to have those contracts is because they're the only ones that can actually achieve that level of distribution based on the budget that they're given by the government. So I believe it's around £1 a plate in hospitals for the entire day. And so it's eye-wateringly low amounts that these corporations have to deal with. And so it basically becomes industrialized as a product of the amount of money that's been injected into it. So just from my very short time looking at hospital food, I understand why things like Jamie's school dinners were so tough, because he basically needed to lobby the government to put more money into it, which he did. But then, you've got a whole bunch of middlemen, you're dealing with all these different service contractors, people have different interpretations of the rules. It's very, very hard. But there is definitely a way. I think that's why I still want to do something about it.
I think I would second that, because we challenged our governors and our head teacher over our secondary school meals. The primary school was fine because they had a nice kitchen and they did a balanced meal, and when they went to secondary school and they were given horrendous food at high prices, $3.50 or something for a pizza slice, and a panini with grilled bacon. And they said, I'm sorry, but it's the contracting structure that we have with the government. And as parents, we're just horrified that this was, we said, well, for £3.50 I can do, I can make a cottage pie and feed all these children for a lot less than what we're having to pay for this junk that you're now feeding our children, who are growing children and teenagers that need the substance in the day.
Yeah.
The teacher said, it's out of my control because of the contracting structure.
I tell you who's...
No, they couldn't do it. No.
I tell you who's making really big waves in this is chefs in schools, and Thomasina Mize is one of the patrons of that. She's demonstrating that their model works at the price point that governments and local authorities have set. And I think that's definitely one to watch, because if she can do that in schools, then we could also do that in other public sector environments like hospitals as well. But it really comes down to staff training and actually getting more people involved in the catering industry, because as everyone is probably aware, there's a huge shortage of chefs. It's very hard to get staff these days. And from my experience of going to multiple different hospitals, you have some staff that are like really energetic and really skilled, others that are really unskilled and don't have the capacity to actually produce really good food, other than just putting something into an oven and taking it out and then serving it. So there's a real skill imbalance as well.
But I think there's sort of another thing where I go back to my days where you had that lovely community sort of kitchen ladies, to this, as you just said, that industrialisation where this dried up bit of pizza is made in some factory elsewhere. And we've decommunitised our school dinners. And we've lost that skill base of our community. Our community, and some of our schools have actually had their kitchen shut down. It's farmed in and warmed up.
That happens a lot.
It's really, it's a systemic issue in our schools, which is been in decline for probably 20 or 30 years.
I think one more question and then we're going to break. Or two. Go on.
So this is a question about fish.
Fish.
Thank you so much for the discussion. I feel like I've read so many opinions about fish that even the fish must be confused.
That's a really good description. I'm going to use that.
and just any advice on, I understand in moderation, but really what kind of fish should we eat? All advice.
It's so hard because you read one thing in the literature around the environmental pollutants that are concentrated, particularly in shellfish, for example, in big fatty fish like salmon, even wild salmon. And then you're like, okay, well, we'll go farmed. Farmed, they've got their own issues. They're fed on a weird diet that's not natural. They suffer from lice. They suffer from, there's a whole issue of fake fish. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, why are we eating fish? Is it for protein? Is it for omega-3s? Is it for other elements of, the diet that we need? I love eating fish, and I have it in moderation, using that word, probably once every week, if not once every 2 weeks, to mitigate against any potential environmental pollutants that can be concentrated in fish if it's not farmed properly. I do eat small fish quite a bit, so things like anchovies, herring, that are uniquely delicious and very good for us as well. And you have less of an issue with the environmental pollutants because they're quite small. But it's a real tough choice because we're also told that to save the world, we shouldn't be eating any fish at all. And there is evidence to suggest that as well. I think it really depends on the holistic picture of your diet, where you can choose different proteins and getting diversity as much as possible. That's sort of my strategy, because there is no, I'll be honest, I would love to sit here and be like, these are the only types of fish you can eat and this is what you can't eat. there is no clear-cut answer. And anyone who suggests that there is most likely not being truthful to the evidence. So I would say around once a week, go for small where possible. And I would also envisage things like oysters and shellfish like that to have like once every 2 weeks or so, because there is an environmental pollutant risk.
Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you.
My pleasure. No, that's great.
Thanks, Dr. Rupy. Thanks, all of you. Give us about 2.5 minutes and you'll be able to put some food in your mouth. And there's a whole load of books there that you can buy tonight. Sarah's in charge over there. Give us a wave, Sarah, so you know who she is. Rupy will be here to sign. Hope you'll take one home, take one for your friends, whatever you'd like to do. I love doing these events.
This has been wonderful.
Conversation,
I love it. It's
you
great.
can never predict how probably because of me, but you can never predict how the conversation's going to go. And it's been a real pleasure and an honour to start the book tour here. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming. And let's tuck into some snacks.